The room was buzzing with excitement. People filled the small music hall, their chatter mixing with the soft tuning sounds of pianos. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting a warm glow on the polished wooden floors. Everyone had come to see the famous pianist, who had a reputation for being both brilliant and arrogant. He was known for his sharp suits, confident smile, and a way of looking down on anyone he considered below him. As he walked onto the stage, the crowd immediately went quiet. He raised his hands slightly, letting the silence settle, then began to play a short, impressive piece that showed off his skill. Each note was perfect, precise, and commanding. Some people clapped softly, others watched in awe. At the back of the hall, a simple woman stood quietly near the door. She wore a plain dress, her hair tied back without any fancy style. She carried herself with calmness and a quiet confidence that did not need to be loud or showy. She had come not for fame or applause but simply because she loved music. Many in the room didn't even notice her, assuming she was just another visitor. But she had a secret. Though her appearance was modest, her hands were trained, her fingers used to dancing across piano keys for hours every day. She had practiced in secret, learning songs that could move people to tears. Yet she never sought recognition. Music was her passion, not her path to fame. The pianist paused, the last note lingering in the air. He looked out at the audience with a smirk, as if to say, "No one here can touch me." Then his eyes caught sight of the woman at the back. He raised an eyebrow, leaning toward the microphone. "Who is that over there?" he asked, pointing subtly in her direction. The audience shifted, curious. "A simple-looking person. Do you play piano?" The woman met his gaze calmly and nodded. "Yes," she said softly. The pianist laughed, a sharp, cold sound that echoed through the hall. "Well then," he said, walking toward her slowly. "Let's see how good you really are. I challenge you to a piano duel." The room went silent. A duel? Against this pianist? Some people chuckled nervously, thinking it was a joke. Others leaned forward, intrigued. The woman didn't move. She only nodded once, a quiet acceptance that surprised everyone. She stepped toward the stage without hesitation. There was no fear, only a calm readiness. The audience whispered among themselves. Some were skeptical. How could a simple woman with no visible fame or training stand a chance against someone so skilled and confident? Back on stage, the pianist took his seat at the grand piano. He looked over at her, expecting nerves, hesitation, maybe even a small tremble in her hands. But he saw none of that. Her posture was relaxed yet upright, her fingers lightly touching the keys as if greeting old friends. A small murmur of surprise passed through the audience. Perhaps she had more skill than they realized. He began to play a complex melody, a piece known for its difficulty and dramatic flair. His fingers moved quickly, hitting every note with precision. The music was loud and commanding, filling every corner of the hall. The audience was impressed, but many still assumed that the woman would fail if it came her turn. The pianist leaned back slightly, smiling smugly. "Now it's your turn," he said. She walked to the smaller piano at the side of the stage, one that seemed almost ordinary compared to the grand piano he played. The contrast made the audience smile. How could anyone expect her to compete? Yet she didn't look intimidated. She sat down, her hands hovering above the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, as if listening to the world around her before letting the music flow through her. When she played her first note, it was soft, almost unassuming. But there was something in it that immediately drew the audience's attention. The sound was clear, full, and expressive. It was as if every note carried a story. The pianist raised his eyebrows, a hint of surprise crossing his face. He hadn't expected her to play with such confidence and emotion. The audience leaned forward, captivated. Some held their breath, not wanting to miss a single sound. Others exchanged glances, realizing this might not be the easy duel they had anticipated. Her hands moved across the keys with grace and precision. Every note was intentional, every pause meaningful. She didn't need to play loudly to impress. The music itself spoke for her. The pianist tried to maintain his composure, continuing his piece, but he could feel the shift. The energy in the room was changing. People were no longer just observing. They were listening, fully immersed. The sound from her piano seemed to have a life of its own, filling the hall with warmth and emotion. He glanced at her again, noting the calm expression on her face. There was no arrogance, no attempt to show off. Yet, the skill she displayed was undeniable. He felt a twinge of unease. This wasn't the simple woman he thought he could easily outplay. She had something more, something he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just technique. It was feeling, heart, and a deep connection to the music. The audience began to react. Some whispered excitedly, unable to believe the talent they were witnessing. Others sat in stunned silence, their eyes wide, hearts moved by the melody. Even those who had come to watch the pianist, expecting his usual show of brilliance, now found themselves captivated by her performance. The duel had shifted from a contest of skill to a moment of wonder and admiration. As she continued to play, the pianist could feel the tension growing. He had always been confident, almost untouchable when it came to music. Yet now he felt a creeping doubt. Could he truly compete with someone so gifted? Someone whose talent had been hidden beneath a simple appearance? For the first time in years, he questioned his own superiority. The simple woman finished her first section, letting the last note hang in the air. The silence that followed was heavy, full of anticipation. Then the audience erupted in applause, louder and more heartfelt than anything the pianist had received earlier. He looked around, seeing the admiration in their eyes, the smiles of amazement. He realized, perhaps too late, that this was no ordinary duel. He had underestimated her completely. She nodded slightly, acknowledging the applause, but didn't let it distract her. There was more to play, more to show. The duel was just beginning, and she was ready. Meanwhile, the pianist felt a mix of emotions: surprise, respect, and a growing sense of humility. The simple woman, who had seemed so ordinary at first glance, was proving herself to be extraordinary. The audience sat in rapt attention, knowing they were witnessing something special, something they would talk about for a long time. And at that moment, the pianist realized that appearances could be deceiving, that true talent often hides in the most unexpected places. The duel, meant to be a display of arrogance and superiority, was becoming a lesson in humility, and the music hall was about to remember this encounter for years to come. The room was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. The audience could feel the tension between the two pianists. The elitist pianist, still at the grand piano, tried to maintain his confident facade, but the surprise on his face was hard to hide. He had expected this duel to be easy, a chance to showcase his superiority and humiliate a simple-looking woman. Instead, he found himself facing someone whose skill and emotion challenged everything he believed about music and talent. He glanced at her again, noting the calmness in her eyes. She didn't look nervous, excited, or afraid. She simply sat, focused, letting the music guide her fingers. The audience, meanwhile, leaned forward in their seats. Whispers filled the hall, questions running through everyone's minds. How could she play with such depth? How had she learned all this without anyone knowing? Some shook their heads, unable to believe what they were seeing. The elitist pianist straightened, took a deep breath, and decided to show off even more. He began a new piece, more complicated than before, each note rapid and precise. He moved across the keys with practiced skill, making it clear he was experienced and confident. Some audience members were impressed, clapping quietly at his technical ability. But it wasn't enough. The woman at the smaller piano didn't seem intimidated. She listened carefully, as if absorbing every sound he made, and waited for her turn to respond. Her hands hovered over the keys for a moment. Then slowly she began to play. Her music was soft at first, almost shy, but it carried a warmth that immediately drew attention. Unlike the pianist, who focused on showing speed and technical prowess, she let each note tell a story. The melody rose and fell naturally, gentle yet powerful. The audience leaned in, their eyes wide with surprise. This was no ordinary performance. This was music that touched hearts. Some in the crowd began to murmur in excitement. They had expected a simple woman to struggle, to stumble, maybe even embarrass herself. Instead, she played with grace, skill, and confidence. Her fingers moved across the keys as if they had been made for this moment, creating a harmony that seemed to fill every corner of the hall. The elitist pianist paused for a brief moment, his fingers resting on the keys, realizing that he had underestimated her. He had assumed talent could be judged by appearance, but he was wrong. He tried to continue his piece, faster, more complex, attempting to regain his control of the duel. But the music he produced now felt forced, mechanical. The emotion that had once flowed naturally from him was replaced with tension. Every note he played reminded him of the woman's extraordinary skill. The audience began to focus more on her music, leaning forward, captivated. Their eyes followed every subtle movement of her hands, every expression of her face, as the melody told a story they had never heard before. She didn't try to compete with the pianist's speed. Instead, she focused on expression and technique. She added small variations to the melody, subtle touches that made the music her own. The audience felt the difference immediately. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. Others whispered to one another, amazed at her ability to combine precision and emotion. The pianist, for all his technical skill, could not capture the same feeling. He began to realize that this duel was not about playing faster or more complicated pieces. It was about connection, heart, and the soul of music. The woman's music grew stronger. She began to move more confidently across the keys, her fingers dancing lightly yet purposefully. Each note resonated with clarity. Each chord was deliberate. She played not to impress but to express, and the audience responded. Applause began to ripple quietly, then grew louder, almost uncontrollable. Even those who had come to see the elitist pianist perform found themselves enchanted by her performance. The pianist's arrogance was fading. He no longer smiled at the audience, no longer tried to dominate the music. He felt a deep respect mixed with unease. He had assumed he was the best, the only one capable of impressing the crowd. But here was someone who challenged his assumptions, someone who showed that talent could exist where he least expected it. He had underestimated not just her skill but her heart, her passion, and her ability to communicate through music. The duel continued, the two pianists now in silent competition. He played with intensity, trying to prove his superiority, but the woman responded with elegance and emotion. She adapted to every twist in the music, every change in tempo, without hesitation. Her focus was unwavering. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply let the music flow naturally. The contrast between their styles was clear. He played with pride and force. She played with heart and purpose. The audience watched, captivated. Some were on the edge of their seats, unable to tear their eyes away from the performance. Others had tears forming, moved by the beauty of the music. This duel had become more than a contest of skill. It was a moment of connection, a lesson in humility, and a celebration of the power of talent when paired with dedication and passion. As the performance went on, the pianist began to notice small details in her technique that were extraordinary. Her transitions were seamless, her rhythm flawless, her expression nuanced. Every time he tried to push harder, to show more, she responded with music that was not just equal but sometimes even better. He felt a sinking feeling in his chest. He had expected to dominate, to showcase his brilliance, but now he was learning something important. Talent cannot be measured by appearance or reputation alone. True skill shines through in action, not in words or arrogance. The duel reached a quiet moment. Both pianists stopped playing simultaneously, leaving a silence that seemed to stretch across the hall. The audience held their breath, waiting for the next move. The woman's eyes met his briefly. There was no mockery, no triumph in her gaze, only focus and calm determination. The pianist looked back, feeling an unfamiliar emotion. Humility. He realized that the woman was not just skilled. She was extraordinary. and he had been blind to it because he judged her too quickly. When the woman began her next piece, it was as if the room itself leaned closer to listen. Her music had depth, warmth, and a story that drew everyone in. The pianist tried to match her, but his playing lacked the same heart. He had technical skill, yes, but he now understood that music was more than speed and accuracy. It was about emotion, connection, and the ability to make the audience feel something deeper than themselves. By the end of her section, the audience erupted in applause, cheering loudly, some standing to show their admiration. The woman nodded politely, accepting their appreciation without fanfare. She had not sought attention, yet she had captured every heart in the room. The pianist looked around, taking in the reaction, feeling a mix of awe and self-reflection. He had challenged a simple woman, expecting an easy victory, and had instead faced someone who taught him a powerful lesson. The duel was far from over, but the balance had shifted. What had started as a display of arrogance had turned into a showcase of true talent. The audience now waited with bated breath for what would come next, knowing that this was no ordinary performance. The simple woman at the piano had not just answered the challenge. She had transformed the room, reminding everyone that skill, passion, and heart are the true measures of greatness. The duel had entered a new phase. The simple woman had proven her skill, and the audience was completely captivated. Whispers and soft gasps of admiration filled the hall as the pianist stared across the stage. He was still at his grand piano, playing pieces that demanded technical skill and precision. But now, every note he struck was measured against the woman's growing mastery. She wasn't just playing. She was communicating, telling a story through the music that reached every listener. Her fingers danced across the keys, gentle at times, forceful at others, perfectly balanced. Each chord had emotion, each melody a sense of purpose. The audience began to notice the subtleties in her performance. The way her hands moved in perfect rhythm, the way she emphasized certain notes to create feeling, the way she paused just long enough to make the next sound more powerful. It was clear that her talent was not just about skill, it was about artistry, about understanding the language of music and speaking it fluently. The pianist tried to push himself harder. He moved faster, his fingers striking notes with impressive speed. Yet, despite the technical brilliance, his music felt heavier, forced, lacking the soul that she had already shown. Every time he attempted to impress with complexity, she responded with elegance and expression, turning the hall into a space filled with beauty and harmony. He noticed the subtle movements of her hands, how she seemed to anticipate every key, every chord. It was as if she and the piano were one, a single entity creating sound. The audience was mesmerized. Some leaned forward in their seats, unable to take their eyes off her. Others closed their eyes, letting the music flow through them. They weren't just listening, they were feeling. The simple woman had transformed the duel from a competition into a shared experience, one that touched everyone present. People who had come expecting entertainment from the famous pianist were now silently cheering for her, captivated by the depth of her talent. The pianist's expression shifted. There was still pride in his skill, but it was now mixed with something unfamiliar. Respect, awe, and even a little fear. He realized that this was not a simple challenge. This woman, whom he had underestimated from the start, was something extraordinary. She wasn't just matching him. In many ways, she was surpassing him. And it was not arrogance that made her great. It was humility, focus, and the purity of her love for music. He played another complex passage, hoping to regain his edge. He struck the keys with precision, showing off his speed and control. But the notes fell flat against the resonance of her music. She responded not with speed but with expression, turning each phrase into a story. The contrast became obvious. His playing was technical, impressive, but hers had heart. The audience could feel it, and their reaction reflected the truth. They were moved by her, enchanted by her, drawn into the world she was creating. The duel became almost silent in a different sense. While both pianists continued to play, the audience seemed to hold its collective breath, listening intently. Every sound mattered. Every pause, Every chord, every soft note had significance. It was no longer about winning or losing. The music had become a living conversation, a dialogue between two people who spoke the same language differently. The simple woman spoke with grace, clarity, and depth, while the pianist spoke with force, speed, and showmanship. And in that moment, the difference was clear. Connection mattered more than display. The pianist's confidence wavered. He had faced many talented musicians before, but none had so effortlessly captured the hearts of the audience while challenging him at every turn. He found himself pausing, unsure of the next move, while she continued, flowing naturally from one phrase to another. There was a quiet confidence in her play that made his flashy techniques seem hollow by comparison. He realized that his approach had been wrong. Music was not about arrogance or intimidation. It was about feeling, emotion, and the ability to touch others. As she played, she began to vary her tempo, slowing down at moments to let certain notes resonate, speeding up only to build anticipation and excitement. She added gentle flourishes that enhanced the piece without distracting from the melody. The audience was spellbound. Even the pianist, despite his own pride and desire to dominate the stage, could not deny the beauty he heard. He leaned back slightly, listening more than playing, trying to understand what made her performance so extraordinary. The woman's eyes were closed, her focus absolute. She was in the moment, letting the music guide her hands and emotions. Each note seemed effortless, though the complexity of her playing was undeniable. She didn't look at the audience, didn't seek their approval. She played for the music itself, and that sincerity resonated more deeply than any show of skill ever could. The audience could feel her dedication, her love for what she was doing, and it moved them. The pianist, for all his experience, began to feel the pressure of the performance in a new way. He had always been able to rely on his reputation, on the expectation that his skill would awe anyone who watched. But now he was facing someone who challenged not only his technique but his understanding of what music could be. He was learning in real time that music was more than notes on a page. It was emotion, communication, and the power to connect. And she, the simple woman he had mocked, was teaching him this lesson. The duel continued, with both pianists fully engaged. He tried to regain control with rapid, intricate passages, but she matched him in complexity while adding feeling that made each note shine. The audience sensed the shift in power, the subtle change from expectation to admiration. What had started as a duel of skill was now a lesson in humility and a showcase of true talent. People in the hall began to whisper, sharing their amazement, pointing out details in her performance that they found astonishing. Her music began to rise, building into a crescendo that filled the hall with sound and emotion. The pianist's fingers flew over the keys, but the difference in tone was evident. His playing was impressive, yes, but it lacked the heart she conveyed. She was not trying to win or show off. She was expressing herself fully, and it touched everyone present. The audience clapped quietly at first, then more loudly, unable to contain their admiration. Their cheers were not just for talent but for authenticity, for the way she had made the music feel alive. The pianist realized, with a growing sense of respect, that he had misjudged her completely. He had assumed that appearances told the whole story, that a simple woman with no formal recognition could not possibly challenge him. Yet here she was, demonstrating not just ability but artistry, intelligence, and emotional depth. He felt something he had rarely felt in public: humility. He understood that he had much to learn, not about technique, but about the essence of music itself. As the performance continued, the woman's music softened and grew louder, her fingers moving with precision and expression. Each phrase carried weight. Each chord seemed to have meaning beyond the notes themselves. The audience was captivated, some leaning forward, some closing their eyes, completely absorbed. Even those who had been fans of the pianist began to shift their attention. The duel was no longer a contest of fame or arrogance. It was a celebration of hidden talent, of the unexpected brilliance that could emerge from someone overlooked. The pianist paused, realizing that this duel was not going as he had planned. He looked at her again, noticing the calm determination on her face. She wasn't performing for him or for the audience. She was performing for herself, for the music. That realization hit him deeply. He had underestimated what it meant to truly play, to truly express. His skill, while impressive, could not replace the honesty and heart she brought to the keys. The simple woman continued to play, her music rising to a climax that drew cheers from every corner of the hall. Her hands moved gracefully, her fingers dancing across the keys with precision and emotion. The pianist, despite his efforts, could not match the depth and beauty she displayed. He felt a strange mixture of awe, humility, and admiration. He had challenged her, expecting an easy victory, and now he was learning that talent, when paired with heart and dedication, could surpass arrogance and reputation. By the end of her section, the audience erupted into applause, some standing, some cheering loudly, others wiping tears from their eyes. The woman nodded politely, accepting the admiration with quiet grace. The pianist looked on, stunned, realizing that this simple woman had changed everything he thought he knew about music, skill, and humility. The duel was far from over, but the balance had shifted irrevocably. The audience had witnessed the rise of a hidden talent, and the elitist pianist had learned a lesson he would never forget. The room seemed to hold its breath as the duel reached a turning point. The simple woman had already shown incredible skill, captivating the audience with every note. The elitist pianist, for the first time in his career, felt a weight on his shoulders that was heavier than any technical challenge. He had always relied on his reputation, on the assumption that his fame and skill would impress and dominate any performance. But now, facing her, he realized that the game had changed. This was not about reputation or appearance. It was about heart, emotion, and connection. He struck the keys with renewed effort, trying to regain his position in the duel. His fingers moved with precision, hitting every note as perfectly as possible. Yet, something was different. The energy in the room had shifted. The audience was no longer just observing. They were fully immersed, leaning toward her, hanging on every sound she produced. Her music was alive, speaking directly to them. He could feel their eyes on him, expecting brilliance, yet they were being drawn to her instead. The woman didn't rush. She let the music flow naturally, allowing each note to resonate. There was a rhythm in her playing that felt organic, alive, almost breathing. Her expression was calm, focused, yet there was a spark in her eyes that hinted at confidence she had not yet revealed. She wasn't trying to overwhelm him. She was simply playing as she always had, letting her heart guide her hands. The pianist realized that this was where he had gone wrong. He had played to impress, to dominate, to show his superiority. She played to express, to communicate, to move hearts. The difference was immense. The audience felt it too. Some gasped softly, amazed at how she could convey so much through sound. Others leaned forward, listening with rapt attention. Every note seemed to tell a story. Every pause seemed intentional. She played not just for herself but for everyone in the room. The pianist noticed that the subtlety of her expression made his aggressive technique seem less appealing. He had thought that power and speed were enough to impress, but now he understood that they were only part of what made music truly remarkable. He tried again, attempting a complex sequence, fast and technically demanding. His fingers moved with incredible speed, striking chords that would have left most performers breathless. Yet, she responded effortlessly, weaving the notes into melodies that were both intricate and graceful. She did not falter, she did not hesitate, and she did not seem impressed by his speed. She had something else. Control, understanding, and an innate musicality that went beyond technique. The pianist felt a pang of unease, realizing that skill alone was not enough. Her music began to swell, growing louder, richer, more expressive. The hall was filled with sound that was both powerful and delicate. She shifted seamlessly between passages, some fast and playful, others slow and emotional. The audience was completely entranced, some whispering to their neighbors, others simply sitting in awe. They were witnessing something extraordinary, something that transcended a simple duel. This was art, pure and unfiltered, coming from a place of deep connection to the piano and to the music itself. The pianist felt his heart rate increase. He had faced many skilled musicians, yet none had challenged him in this way. None had combined technical mastery with emotion so flawlessly. He realized that he had been arrogant, assuming that talent could be measured by appearance or reputation. He had underestimated her entirely, and now the consequences were clear. The duel had become more than a contest of skill. It was a lesson in humility, a reminder that true talent often hides in unexpected places. She continued to play, her hands moving gracefully across the keys. Every note was intentional, every pause meaningful. She added subtle flourishes, small touches that enhanced the music without distracting from the melody. The audience responded instinctively, some closing their eyes to feel the music fully, others sitting forward, mesmerized. The pianist noticed the way they reacted, the way they were drawn to her, and he felt a mixture of awe and envy. He had always been admired, always been the center of attention, but now he was witnessing someone else captivate an entire room effortlessly. He tried to regain his composure. He played with intensity, striking each chord with precision, moving quickly from one passage to another. But her music had already taken root in the hearts of the listeners. They were no longer just observing, they were experiencing. Every phrase she played seemed to resonate with something deep inside them. The pianist realized that he could not compete in the same way. He could show skill, but she could evoke emotion. And in the end, emotion was what truly mattered. The duel continued, the tension between the two pianists palpable. He played with determination, hoping to impress, to show that he was still the master. But she responded with calm authority, each note deliberate, each melody purposeful. The audience sensed the difference. They were no longer waiting to see who would win. They were listening to the story she was telling through music. The pianist understood, perhaps for the first time, that music was not just about skill or recognition. It was about communication, about touching the hearts of others. Her playing grew even more expressive. She transitioned between themes effortlessly, her fingers moving with grace and precision. She varied the dynamics, softening and intensifying the music at exactly the right moments. The audience reacted instinctively, leaning forward, holding their breath, some even closing their eyes to feel the sound fully. It was as if the piano had become an extension of her soul, each note a reflection of her dedication and love for the art. The pianist looked on, realizing that he had been challenged not just in skill but in understanding. He had assumed mastery meant control, but she was showing him that mastery could also mean connection. He paused briefly, taking a deep breath, recognizing that he could not force the duel back in his favor with sheer technicality. He had to acknowledge her talent, respect it, and perhaps learn from it. The audience felt the change in energy, sensing the humility beginning to surface in the pianist. It was a subtle shift, but powerful. He was no longer just trying to dominate. He was truly listening, experiencing the music alongside everyone else. And in that moment, the duel became more than competition. It became a shared experience, a collective appreciation of extraordinary talent. The woman's music began to soften, flowing gently, her hands caressing the keys with care and intent. The pianist noticed the subtlety of her timing, the thoughtfulness in her phrasing. She had not rushed, had not tried to outshine him, yet her performance was undeniably commanding. The audience was enraptured, some leaning forward, some closing their eyes, fully absorbed in the sound. Every note seemed to reach into the hearts of the listeners, drawing them closer, making them part of the experience. He realized, fully, that he had misjudged her from the start. He had assumed that a simple appearance meant simple skill. He had thought that arrogance and reputation would carry him through the duel. Now he knew he had been wrong. Talent cannot be measured by appearance, and true mastery comes not from ego or display but from dedication, understanding, and the ability to convey feeling. She had all of these qualities and more. The pianist felt a deep respect for her, mixed with humility and a sense of awe. The performance continued, building to a crescendo. The woman's music filled the hall with warmth, beauty, and emotion. The pianist tried to maintain his composure, to continue with his complex passages, but he realized that he was no longer in control. She had captured the audience's hearts completely. The energy in the room had shifted. It was no longer a duel of skill, but a celebration of her extraordinary talent. People applauded quietly between phrases, moved by the music, cheering for the unexpected brilliance that had emerged. Finally, the woman played the last notes of her section. She let the final chord resonate, then slowly lifted her hands from the keys. The audience erupted in applause, some standing, others cheering loudly. Their reaction was not just to her skill, but to the sincerity and heart she had shown. The pianist sat in stunned silence, realizing that this was a moment he would never forget. He had challenged her expecting an easy victory, and instead, he had been humbled by someone he had underestimated. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time, recognizing the dedication, talent, and heart that had gone into every note. He understood now that the duel had been more than a competition. It had been a lesson, one that would stay with him forever. The audience had witnessed something rare and beautiful. The emergence of a hidden talent that had transformed an ordinary moment into an extraordinary memory. The pianist, humbled and inspired, realized that the true value of music lay not in victory or recognition, but in the connection it created and the emotions it evoked. As the applause continued, he nodded respectfully, a quiet acknowledgement of the lesson he had learned. The woman, with modesty and grace, accepted the admiration without arrogance. The duel had shifted, and the balance of power had changed. What began as a challenge born from pride had become a moment of revelation, for both the pianist and the audience, showing that true talent and heart often emerge from the most unexpected places. The hall was alive with sound, the duel between the two pianists reaching a peak of intensity. The audience was completely absorbed, caught between the intricate, fast-paced techniques of the elitist pianist and the expressive, heartfelt music of the simple woman. Every note she played seemed to carry emotion, telling stories without words. Her fingers moved across the keys with a confidence that belied her simple appearance, and the room responded to her music with a collective awe that filled every corner. The pianist felt a rising tension in his chest. He had tried to impress with speed and complexity, to dominate the stage with his technical prowess. Yet, each time he struck the keys, she countered not with force but with elegance, precision, and deep emotion. He realized that no amount of flashing techniques could match the way her music connected with the hearts of the audience. For the first time, he felt the sting of being outshone, of being truly humbled by someone he had underestimated. He tried to play louder, striking the keys with more force, hoping to draw attention back to himself. But it was as if the hall itself favored her music. Every chord she played resonated deeply, reaching beyond technical perfection into a realm of artistry he had rarely witnessed. The audience reacted instinctively, leaning forward, their eyes wide with admiration, their breaths held as they absorbed the flow of her melodies. Some closed their eyes, letting the music carry them into a world of feeling they had not anticipated. The simple woman's expressions were calm, her focus unwavering. She didn't glance at the pianist, nor did she seem concerned about the duel. Her hands moved with intent, each note carefully chosen, each chord perfectly timed. There was a natural rhythm to her playing, a flow that made complex passages seem effortless. She played not to win but to express herself fully, and that authenticity had a magnetic effect on everyone present. The pianist, watching her closely, began to see the depth of her talent. It wasn't just the notes she played, but how she played them. Each pause, each crescendo, each soft whisper of a chord carried meaning. He realized that he had been blind, judging by appearances and underestimating her ability. He had assumed that skill could only come from someone with a polished image or a prestigious background. She had no such trappings, yet she commanded the stage in a way he had never experienced. As the music continued, the duel evolved into a conversation between the two pianists. He played a complex passage, fast and intricate, hoping to impress with technical skill. She responded seamlessly, weaving emotion into every note, creating a harmony that transcended mere technique. The audience sensed the interplay, captivated by the contrast and the beauty of the combined performance. The room was no longer a place of competition. It was a sanctuary of music, where hearts were connected and emotions shared. The pianist felt a profound realization settle within him. He had spent years building a reputation, honing his technique, and asserting dominance in every performance. Yet here was someone who, without fame or recognition, demonstrated a mastery that went beyond speed or precision. She played with soul, with feeling, and with a natural command of expression that he had never learned. Humility washed over him as he continued, no longer playing to show off, but simply to participate in the music alongside her. The woman's performance intensified, rising to a crescendo that filled the hall with an emotional power that was almost tangible. Her fingers flew across the keys with effortless grace, each note resonating clearly, yet each one imbued with subtle emotion. The audience responded, some rising to their feet, clapping and cheering, moved by the extraordinary talent they were witnessing. It was a rare moment when technical skill and emotional depth met perfectly, creating an experience that no one present would ever forget. He watched, absorbing every movement, every nuance. The duel had transformed into a lesson, one that went beyond skill or recognition. He began to understand that music was not about ego or superiority. It was about communication, connection, and honesty. Her playing revealed the truth of her dedication, the countless hours she had spent practicing, and the love she had for the piano. He felt a deep respect for her, mixed with a humility that was unfamiliar but profoundly necessary. The simple woman did not play to dominate. She played to share. Her melodies spoke to the audience, each one telling a story that words could never capture. The pianist felt the audience's energy shift, their attention fully absorbed by her performance. The realization struck him. He had misjudged everything. Talent could be quiet, humble, and hidden, yet still possess a power far greater than any display of arrogance or reputation. He paused for a moment, letting the music breathe. She continued, her hands gliding over the keys, each note deliberate, each chord perfectly balanced. She introduced subtle variations, gentle flourishes that enhanced the music without distracting from the melody. The audience leaned in, completely absorbed, sensing that they were witnessing a rare and special moment. The pianist's attempts at technical brilliance now seemed secondary, almost irrelevant, compared to the authenticity and heart of her performance. The hall was filled with sound, a mixture of technical skill and heartfelt expression, a dialogue that transcended competition. The pianist realized that he had never truly understood music in its entirety. He had focused on reputation, recognition, and precision, neglecting the emotional connection that gave music its true power. Watching her, he learned that the essence of music lay not in speed or complexity, but in the ability to move hearts and souls. She had mastered that essence. Her music began to soften, flowing gently yet powerfully, creating a sense of calm and warmth. The pianist felt a strange mixture of awe and vulnerability. He had always been confident in his abilities, yet she had shown him that there was a depth he had never reached. He understood now that skill alone could not inspire, could not touch lives in the way her music did. Her performance was a reminder that true mastery came from dedication, love, and authenticity. The audience responded with enthusiasm, their applause loud and heartfelt. Some rose to their feet, cheering for the simple woman who had captivated everyone without fanfare or showmanship. She accepted their admiration with grace, a quiet smile acknowledging their praise. The pianist, humbled and introspective, realized that he had been given a rare gift, the opportunity to witness extraordinary talent and learn from it. He had challenged her expecting an easy victory, yet she had taught him a lesson that would remain with him forever. He leaned back slightly, observing her, feeling a sense of awe and respect. The duel had begun as a challenge, but it had become something far greater. A shared experience, a moment of discovery, and a testament to the power of hidden talent. The audience had seen an extraordinary performance, and the pianist had learned the most important lesson of his career. Never judge someone by appearances, and never underestimate the heart behind the music. As the final notes lingered in the air, the hall filled with applause once more. The simple woman's performance had reached its conclusion, leaving a lasting impact on everyone present. The pianist, humbled and reflective, knew that this was a moment he would never forget. The duel had transformed him, teaching him that true mastery came not from ego or recognition, but from sincerity, dedication, and the ability to touch the hearts of others through music. And in that moment, the audience realized they had witnessed a performance that would be remembered for years to come. A lesson in talent, humility, and the power of music itself. The duel had reached its conclusion, and the hall was filled with a mix of awe, admiration, and quiet reflection. The audience sat in stunned silence for a moment, letting the final notes linger in the air. Every person present felt as if they had been part of something extraordinary, a rare experience that would stay with them for years. The simple woman sat at the piano, her hands resting lightly on the keys, a calm smile on her face. She had played not for recognition or victory, but for the music itself. Her passion had spoken louder than any competition, leaving an impact far beyond technical skill. The elitist pianist, who had started the duel with confidence and pride, sat at his piano, hands trembling slightly from the intensity of the performance. For the first time, he felt a humility he had never known. He had thought himself the master, untouchable in his skill and reputation. Yet this simple woman had challenged him in every way and revealed the limitations of arrogance. He looked at her with genuine respect, realizing that he had been mistaken to judge her by appearances or underestimate her talent. Her music had not only outshone his technical display, but it had touched the hearts of everyone present, including him. The audience erupted into applause, louder and more heartfelt than any the pianist had received before. People were on their feet, cheering, some even whistling in admiration. They had witnessed a performance that transcended competition, a moment of pure artistry and human connection. The woman rose gracefully, acknowledging the applause with a modest nod. She did not gloat, did not make a show of her triumph. Her demeanor was humble, her focus still on the music itself rather than the recognition she had earned. It was this combination of skill and humility that made her presence so powerful. The pianist finally stood, walking toward her with a slow, measured step. The audience quieted, sensing that a significant moment was about to unfold. He extended his hand, a gesture of acknowledgement and respect. "I underestimated you," he said quietly, his voice carrying sincerity rather than arrogance. "Your talent is extraordinary. I have much to learn from you." The woman smiled gently, accepting his gesture. There was no bitterness, no resentment, only mutual respect. In that moment, the duel transformed from a contest into a shared recognition of artistry and dedication. The pianist had learned a lesson that would stay with him forever. True mastery is not measured by reputation, showmanship, or arrogance, but by the ability to connect, to express, and to move others through one's craft. The audience continued to applaud, many cheering for both performers. They had been part of something rare, something that reminded them of the power of music to unite and inspire. The simple woman had taken what began as a challenge and turned it into a testament to dedication, practice, and authenticity. Her music had not only impressed the crowd, but had touched them in ways words could not describe. As the applause subsided, the pianist returned to his piano and played a short, humble piece. It was not meant to compete, but to show his newfound understanding and appreciation of music's emotional power. The notes were softer, more deliberate, carrying a depth that had been missing from his earlier performances. The audience listened intently, realizing that they were witnessing a transformation in the pianist as well. The duel had become more than a performance. It had become a lesson for everyone present. The woman watched him play, a small smile of encouragement on her face. She understood the journey he was on, the realization that talent alone does not make one truly great. She had shared her music openly, honestly, and with heart, and in doing so, had changed the perspective of someone who had once been prideful and arrogant. The pianist's music now carried a new depth, a reflection of the humility and understanding he had gained from the experience. After his piece concluded, the audience stood once more, applauding both performers. They had witnessed a duel that had begun with arrogance and skepticism, only to end with respect, admiration, and a celebration of true talent. People talked quietly among themselves, expressing their amazement and reflecting on what they had seen. The simple woman had reminded everyone that greatness often comes from unexpected places, and that true skill is not measured by appearance or reputation, but by heart, dedication, and authenticity. The pianist approached the woman again, bowing slightly. "Thank you," he said simply. "You have shown me something I will never forget. Your music is a gift, and I am grateful to have experienced it." The woman nodded, her eyes calm and serene. "Thank you," she replied. "Music is meant to be shared. I am glad it reached everyone here today." The audience cheered once more, some calling out words of admiration, others clapping enthusiastically. The room was filled with a sense of joy and inspiration. People had been reminded of the power of passion, practice, and humility. The simple woman had taken a challenge, faced a formidable opponent, and turned it into an unforgettable experience for everyone. In the days that followed, the story of the duel spread. People spoke of the simple woman who had stunned a famous pianist, of the humility he had shown in acknowledging her talent, and of the emotional impact her music had on everyone in the hall. Invitations to perform began to come, and though she accepted some, she remained humble, always focused on the music rather than the recognition. Her love for the piano, her dedication, and her authenticity continued to inspire those who heard her play. The pianist, too, carried the experience with him. He reflected often on the lesson he had learned. Never judge a person by their appearance, never underestimate hidden talent, and always remember the importance of heart and connection in music. He approached his future performances with a renewed sense of purpose, incorporating emotion, sincerity, and humility into his playing. The duel had changed him as much as it had changed the audience. Months later, both performers met again in a small, intimate concert. This time, there was no duel, no challenge, only a shared love of music. They played together, their melodies intertwining in harmony, demonstrating the power of collaboration and mutual respect. The audience watched in awe, witnessing two great talents coming together not to compete, but to create something beautiful. The simple woman's journey had inspired many, showing that true greatness lies not in showmanship or reputation, but in dedication, heart, and the ability to touch the souls of others. The piano duel, once a moment of arrogance and challenge, had become a legendary story in the local music community. It was remembered as the day a humble, talented woman showed that true artistry can emerge from anywhere, and that even the most confident masters can learn valuable lessons from those they least expect. The hall remained a place where music, humility, and passion were celebrated, a reminder to all that greatness is measured not by appearance or status, but by the depth of one's heart and the honesty of one's craft. The final memory of that day was simple yet profound. The woman seated at the piano, her hands moving gracefully across the keys, creating music that reached deep into the hearts of all who listened. The pianist, humbled and transformed, watching with respect and admiration. The audience, captivated and inspired, leaving the hall with a renewed belief in the power of talent, dedication, and humility. It was a story that would be told for years to come, a testament to the enduring truth that genuine artistry shines brightest when it comes from the heart.